Hey, welcome to Loose Change. Hashtag, you better watch this show or else. I'm Jim Evans, and I'll tell you what, you'll be glad you are watching this show, I'm telling you, because we always do. But first, as we always do, what's going on here? As we tape, we are right in the middle of Halloween season. A lot of fun, haunted houses everywhere, a lot of folks having a lot of fun with that. Greg, I saw this billboard driving down the road. It said 11 dimensions of terror, 11 dimensions of terror. And I thought, well, right now, that would be 9 dimensions of monsters and ghosts and ghouls and goblins and witches and all that stuff. And the other 2 would have to be the presidential debates and playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. That's terror right now, that's for sure. I'll tell you what, though, it's going really good for Cleveland sports of late, isn't it? The Cavs are doing great. The Indians are doing great. The pro football team is doing great. Well, yeah, you know, Cleveland St. Ignatius has only lost 1 game, so they're doing all right. How about the Indians, though? And pitcher Trevor Bauer. You probably know he cut his finger working on his drone at home. Then he tries to pitch in Game 3 in Toronto. If you saw it, he's bleeding all over the place. Had to take him out. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm thinking, you know, as a fan, I want to see an athlete be positive, not its blood type. But can you believe that? He went 2/3 of an innings. And can you believe that Terry Francona yanked him right in the middle of a no-hitter? And what else? So, Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte was diving into the Dancing with the Stars pool. Not doing too good either. In fact, he really bombed, Greg, on the Latin competition. And afterward, he responded by saying, "I was robbed." In true Lochte fashion. Hey, you might feel that way if you don't hang around. Viking Jim joins us next, right here on Loose Change. Good.
All they want is a chance to be loved, to be your companion, to stand by your side. And what do they ask in return? Just a little love from you. Consider adopting a shelter pet from one of the great organizations in the Mahoning Valley. Proudly sponsored by Armstrong Positively Pets. Adopt a shelter pet, a friend for life.
Welcome back to Loose Change. I'm Jim Evans. See, I wasn't kidding. I told you we had a great guest. None other than Viking Jim from iHeartMedia joins us now. Vike, thanks for coming on the show. And
thanks for having me down, Jim. Glad to be here.
As we like to do off the top, for those who don't know, if you just give us a little background information, where you're from, where you went to school, and how you got your career rolling.
Well, I am a born and bred native of Awesome Town, Ohio, class of '81, and I grew up listening largely to Thomas John on the radio. He was my guy. Well, Bootsy as well, Boots Bell. Got to give credit to Boots Bell, but when I grew up, I wanted to be Thomas John.
Wow.
Little did I know.
Does he know that?
Now. Yeah. Yes. As a matter of fact, anytime I'm frustrated with anything at work, I'll tell TJ, "This is all your fault," you know. But I grew up wanting to be in broadcasting.
Okay.
My brother had a CB radio that he would only let me use under his permission, but when he would leave the house with his friends, I would use it because I was fascinated with the idea that I could talk to hundreds of people on the CB, much less thousands of people on the air. But it was kind of a boyhood dream of mine. But things being what they were, I went on to different things. I went to college for a long time, YSU, got a history degree. Thought I was going to go into academia, but I got disillusioned with academia. Lo and behold, I wind up with a job. There was a gas station that used to sit up on the corner of Belmont and Gypsy. It was a Clark station for years, and in its final incarnation was a Marathon station. Mm-hmm. I was the final manager of that gas station, which will give you an idea of how good my business acumen is because it's now a vacant lot.
Well, I know you always run on premium, so.
There you go. I try. The high test, shall we say. But when I was working at the gas station, I used to call in on big radio on the Wolf when they were on CD 106 at the time. And Fast Freddie, Chrissy Patrick, they had the big radio program in the mornings, and I would call in, and I got to be one of the regular callers.
Okay.
And they bestowed on me the name Viking Jim simply because of, the hat. I bleed purple. I mean, I carved it into my skin and everything, so it must be true.
But, that's tats, man.
It's a beautiful thing. When the blood turns purple, it stays purple forever. But I got to be one of the regular characters on their morning show. Well, lo and behold, I started hanging out at some of the things they were doing at the Ice House Inn in the afternoons and whatnot, and I got wind that they were hiring somebody to do part-time work. And I didn't have to have the FCC sign-off for the operator's license anymore because this was after the deregulation. And one afternoon at the Ice House Inn, Chrissy Patrick was getting ready to go on vacation, and she had, frankly, one hell of a buzz on. And I asked her about the position, and she said, "Well, I can't give you much." And at the time, the gas stations closed down. I'm delivering pizzas. What am I doing with my life? I'll take anything. And I wound up. She gave me the job over at the Wolf when we were back on Webb Road, way back in the woods, back in the day. So I started there, and I actually got in time to realize the frustration of cutting tape and cart machines and getting locked out of the studio. Do you ever have the locked out of the studio dream?
No, but the song is over and I'm not there.
Right. Same idea.
And I'm supposed to be on the set to do the sports, and I'm nowhere to be found. That's the other one.
Right.
And I don't know where I'm at. So
typical broadcaster dreams.
Exactly.
But it was that old school kind of place, and I got my feet wet there. Lo and behold, J-Core buys out Dominic. Clear Channel buys out J-Core, and the big conglomeration happens, and we all wind up out at the Happy Palace out in Boardman that we call home now.
Yeah.
And for some odd reason, I managed to fall face first into the thing I wanted to do my whole life without taking anywhere near a direct path to do it. But I got here somehow, by God.
Well, you're here, and we're certainly glad to have you. And you mentioned Thomas John and Boots Bell. What was it about those guys that really appealed to you that made you really want to try this?
Bootsy was just so... just an entertaining guy.
Yeah, he sure was.
You couldn't hear the guy's voice without feeling good about something. And Thomas John, when I was listening to him, we're talking like mid-late 70s, early 80s. He was the coolest guy on the radio.
We had him on here, yeah.
And the 4 o'clock high. And I was the biggest pain in that guy's behind when I was like 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. It got to the point where I actually got his home number, and I would call him up at home, and he would talk to me, and we'd BS about stuff, and I would call in requests. I'd give him ideas for 4 o'clock highs. I think he did the Ramones for me and a couple of others. But I just really thought that the way they presented themselves and the way they were able to entertain through that medium, I just thought it was something I could do. And I enjoyed listening to them. I enjoyed... I did the thing where you make your own radio broadcast when you've got a couple of cassette decks and you're mixing it down and stuff, and would play records and tape them and do the segues between the records and everything. So, I mean, there's a love for it.
What is your approach now? How do you approach your craft, if you can talk about that?
I try as much as humanly possible to be myself without offending anybody, because
that's a good approach.
Especially now that I'm working in talk.
Right.
Sometimes, honestly, it's hard for me to hold my tongue, because there are times when I want to be the guy at the bar that's telling you, "No, you're wrong." But there comes a point where you have to, and I think this has taught me a lot about respecting people in general, much less on the air, where you have to give people their say. I mean, unless they're completely off the rails. Right. But even if you disagree with someone, you have to hear their side of the story. And especially now that I'm doing a lot more talk, I think that's taught me how to be more patient, to hear other people out, and to respect other people's opinions. But that's kind of the way I try to approach it, where even if I totally disagree with you, you've got a right to express
Sure.
yourself.
Yeah, sure.
And especially in this day and age where everything's gotten down to sound bites, everything's gotten down to reaction rather than thought. And I say that a lot. I think Americans would rather react than think. You and I have had this conversation before. I think it's more important than ever to let everybody have their say and to maybe not only open my mind, but perhaps thereby giving me an opportunity to open theirs to other possibilities.
Obviously, you've dabbled in different areas in broadcasting and radio. But what in your mind makes a good radio announcer? Now, you mentioned about be yourself, but what else might figure into that?
Besides having the pipes for it, I mean, because that's obviously a part of it. If,
Yeah.
if you've got a lousy
Can't
voice,
be.
there's nothing you can do about it. Kind of like in Citizen Kane, where he's trying to make his wife into an opera singer. Well, you know, you can only put so much lipstick on a pig. If you don't have the pipes, you're going to run into a problem. But I think you have to be able to think on your feet and keep an open mind and keep a positive attitude. Because even if you're having the crappiest day in the world, if you project that through the microphone, people are going to sense it. They're definitely going to sense it. So you have to try to keep a positive mindset.
What's your favorite format? What do you prefer the most?
That's a tough question because I started out with obviously doing the rock. And frankly, when I got drawn into talk, the first producing, I was fine. Just producing the River Show or the Verb Show or whatever. But when Dan started approaching me about actually being a fill-in host, I was really awfully nervous about it. But as time went on, I kind of found my own footing. And to tell you the truth, where I enjoy playing the music and everything, the talk's a lot more challenging.
Yeah,
and,
without a doubt.
And a lot more unpredictable. And that's part of what I enjoy about it.
Do you feel like perhaps, though, with music, you had a little more latitude to maybe take a more entertaining approach or a creative approach, or maybe not?
I think the opposite, actually,
Okay,
because
all right.
in the music format, it's somewhat restricted, whereas in this day and age, like I couldn't get away with just throwing a Ramones track on if I felt like it.
Yeah.
And the breaks are a lot more concise these days. It has to do with getting as much information in and you still have to present it in an entertaining way.
Right, yeah.
But I'll put it to you this way. I feel I'm much better in a 10-minute segment where I can develop an idea rather than in a minute or 2-minute segment where I have to get that across plus compress whatever information I need to get in there. So I've got a lot more latitude on talk, I think.
I guess, from the entertainment standpoint, and I still remember, and you were playing some the other day, the bits that you guys used to do on 93. So I suppose that's where I was coming from in terms of being able to have a more creative avenue to pursue.
If you take me back to that day, I would love to go back to that day.
Okay.
Because
tell us what that day is.
When big radio was thriving, when we had the morning show and later they moved us to the afternoons, Fred and I, along with Chrissy Patrick, even Jay Curtis, Nard even, we had this wonderful array of creative minds and creative voices, and we compiled a legacy of some of the greatest comedy bits ever devised by God or man. And if you were to say, if I could go back to that day, if you were to say, we're going to give you a choice, you can either keep doing what you're doing, or we're going to put you in a time machine, or we're going to resurrect big radio when we want you to do that, because the innumerable bits that we did on that program, lampooning everything from trafficant to reality television, local politics, some of the most brilliant things we've ever come up with. The first one that comes to mind is the extreme geriatric wheelchair games. Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. They're screaming down the hall at hip-shattering speeds. Bring along extra Depends, stuff like that. And the whole premise of the bit was they were having a monster truck rally, but at the nursing home. With a special appearance by Christopher Reeve's bedpan crushing super wheelchair Superman, stuff like that.
All in good fun.
All in good fun,
right.
Of course.
Yes.
But just the topical stuff, the traffic and stuff that we did.
Yeah.
Big Jim's polyester warehouse.
Yeah.
You
Great
want to
stuff.
wear skinny ties, you're just afraid to, right? Another one that was great was the downtown Youngstown marijuana factory outlet. When they had that big bust of that huge pot growing factory over on the west side, it was the second one in largest one in U.S. history. Just tons and tons and the song parodies we used to do were amazing too. So if I could go back to then, I would take that back in a heartbeat.
We'll just hold that thought for a moment. We're going to take a break. It's Viking Jim. We'll be back here on Loose Change right after this.
The history, the sports, the stories, the events. Armstrong Local Programming puts the focus on our community. Watch to learn about new events or discover the rich history of our area. You can find local programming on your local programming channel and on demand. Want even more? Subscribe to the Armstrong One Wire channel on YouTube. It's our town all the time with Armstrong Local Programming. One Wire, infinite possibilities.
Back on Loose Change, Dr. Evans, along with none other than Viking Jim, and you were talking about going back to the day, the big radio, and the creative license you had to do a lot of different things. Why has that changed, that you're maybe not in that posture, that position now?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it's something that has something to do with the industry that's like perhaps out of my perception, but I think they want maximum music and maximum information, and also perhaps it has to do that there are certain national shows that it's supposedly that might be their forte, and I guess they want to get more music on and less yakking is what it boils down to.
But I've always been I started a radio, and I'm always for that creative side, and if it's good yakking, whatever it might be, then it's good entertainment, and people like to hear that.
And Fast Freddy still manages to get it all in the afternoons especially. But back in the day I hate saying
I know.
that.
It's what it is.
But anyway, in the old days, we could play less songs, and we still had to keep a certain restriction on how many bits we were doing and how long they were, and we tried to keep mostly around a minute and a half.
Yeah, you can't get carried away with it.
You can't get carried away, but now I just think the thought is that we want to get more music on, and we don't have as much leeway as we used to do. And also, when you had a show like that, honestly, it took 2 to 3 people to produce it and to keep that stuff going. And in this day and age, the way the industry's gotten, they want to make maximum use out of the minimum number of people. And frankly, if they can have one guy carry a show, as Fast Freddy does in the afternoons now, why do you need to get those 2 other people to do something else? So
More with less.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they told us.
Yeah, that's what they told us. But, has it been changed for the better, or no?
It's hard to say. In ways, yes, because especially take
some change is good.
Same change is good,
yeah,
and you take the point of like a music-driven station like The Wolf or Mix 98.9 or whoever. It's essentially a music channel. It's not a comedy channel, so I can see that side of it, especially if it's helping revenue. But when you get into those revenue things, and that's one thing, and I've been in this business a long time, and I still tell people in management, people in sales, when they start talking, revenue,
right.
I'm like, the ratings I understand, the revenue, but it seems to be working, so.
And you're still working.
I'm still working, and
that's key.
that's the bottom line. That's the
the
bottom
key.
line. But I would kind of like to see a return to a little bit more of that kind of old school creativity.
And you don't have that with talk radio, or do you?
You do, really.
Yeah.
It's a lot more subtle.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I like about the talk radio is that you've still got that spontaneity is very much right there. There are times when we're doing the Rivers show where a caller will say something or one of us will come up with a subject or something will just ring a bell where me and Dan, like during a commercial break, oh, okay, set up this song, pull out this, we're going to do a funny bit with this, or we've got a serious thing coming up, or just the extemporaneous commentary that can go on. There's times when Dan will be in the middle of a monologue and he'll make me think of a funny and I'll just chime in. And the next thing you know, he's laughing, I'm laughing, and we can only presume the listeners are laughing. And they seem to think we're doing a pretty good job, so we must be doing something right. There is still, and that's the thing. The extemporaneous, it's still got that immediacy, where it's just not something being repeated with breaks in between it, where you never know what's going to happen from day to day. You really don't. It's always something new, and part of the satisfaction of that is not only is it always something new, but when you pull it off and you have a good show, you know it right away. You don't have to wonder, and it feels good.
And of course, you know, I have that with you when you're able to sit in with us on Sundays. That's
my
big
favorite.
boost to have you there.
That's my favorite. I have a gas hanging out with you Sunday mornings. So
we'll
always
keep that going.
And then we do that same thing on Sunday mornings. We really do. As long as I don't talk about Liverpool Football Club.
But you know, the cool thing about it is, you know, that it's all live. That's one of the cool things about it.
Exactly.
It's all live, and you touched on the things that make it go. What do you prefer to be on that production side with the ability to come on the air as well, or do you like to just be on the other side in the on-air chair and do that exclusively?
I'm not so sure anymore, because I used to think that I liked it on the other side of the glass. I like doing, and I still do it. I love doing my job. And when I used to have to fill in for Dan, frankly, especially how nervous I was the first few times I did it, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I'll fill in for you, I guess.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Because you have to have something to keep that
You
going.
do it right, yeah, it's not easy.
And but after I did it enough times, like maybe after the third or fourth time I did it, I was like, hey, I'm not too bad at this.
Yeah,
I've got an angle. And then I started getting some positive feedback from some of the listeners, and it boosted my confidence, and I'm not really sure which I prefer anymore. Really, I can do either equally.
Obviously, to be prepared and informed, you know, is a big key. But what do you think makes a good talk radio host?
I'll go back to what I was saying earlier, that you have to be able to let other people express themselves and to listen to what they say.
Be a good listener.
Right. Yeah. Be a good listener. Don't interrupt unless they're going off the rails. And if you can handle the ones that go off the rails, even possibly with a little bit of humor, that's always very helpful, because there are a few really batty people out there that like to call and like to try to disrupt the program.
No, there's none.
No,
There's
that never
nobody out there
happens.
doing that. But you know, like for those who may not know, I think most people would have a good idea, you know, what the talk show host does. But as a producer, just briefly describe a few of the things that, because you have to really multitask in there on the other side of the glass, and explain for those who may not know exactly, you know, some of the things that you have to do.
Well, primarily I'm screening the calls. I'm making sure that all the commercial breaks are running on time, that the commercial breaks are ready to go and even, that Dan knows where we're at in the show, anything we have coming up, any guests we possibly have, what time they're coming up, if we have to do any contesting.
And you have to listen to the show.
Yeah, and you have to listen to the show. So basically, I would describe the job of producing an AM talk show as herding wild cats.
That's it. That's as good as any description, Greg, I'd have to say. What don't you like about radio, or is there anything that you can speak to that?
I wish there was more local control of programming. I think it's better. I think right now we've got what I would call regional control, but I think it would be a lot better if there was more local control of programming.
What makes radio better than other medium forms?
It's absolutely free of charge. That's what's so good about
Our radio is, yeah. There are those that not the case. But.
Well, and that's the thing that kind of, the stream casting. I understand it, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I volunteer out at the Golden String Radio. They've got a great streamcast thing, but you also run to the opposite side of the profile there is where you get into people that start a streamcasting show and then go around telling people, I'm on the radio. No, you're not on the radio. You're on the internet. There's a difference.
But you hear, and I've heard, you probably have heard that, at some point maybe radio's going to go away. Do you think that's going to happen?
No.
I don't either, but
not possible.
Not totally.
Not
in the last
possible.
couple moments we have here.
It's still absolutely free, and if you don't like what's on the one, it's still real easy to change to the other one. I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, for sure. You mentioned the Golden Strings, and you've been involved with the Purple Cat. Talk about that briefly. We only have just a little over a moment to go here, but I want you to touch on what those folks do down there.
Purple Cat and Golden String, they help out adults with disabilities, be they physical or emotional or developmental disabilities. And they have a lot of day programs. They got a farm over on the east side, but the one that I work, they got a ton of programs. They got a candy store downtown, Touch the Moon Candy Saloon. I primarily work with the Golden String Radio, and they've got a great internet station at goldenstringradio.org. They do all kinds of programming, music, sports, talk, and it's all staffed by adults that happen to have what we might call disabilities.
Well, you've had them come into our Sunday show. Mentioned a few of the folks that...
Kristen Seidler, Scotty Mincher, and Radar Pavlov. That's my crew.
You roll with them.
Yeah, I do.
Well, and I know you get great pleasure from doing that.
Oh, I love those. Those are like my kids. I don't have any kids of my own, so I adopted these guys, and I'll tell you what, some of the kindest, some of the best people I know, some of my best friends.
Well, it's great that you're doing that, and you're doing a great job with that, and as well as what you're doing with Extra Duties now at iHeartMedia. And again, I always enjoy working with you, and hopefully we'll be able to keep doing that. So.
Me too, pal.
Mike, great to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
The Vikings are doing really good this year, so you got a lot to feel good about. So
5-0.
They're coming with it. So, all right, buddy. Viking Jim, we'll be back to wrap it up here on Loose Change after we do this.
Breaking Bread is Armstrong's ongoing initiative to help feed the hungry in our community. To date, food and funds have been distributed to over 20 food banks. These organizations need our support throughout the year. Donations can be made at your local Armstrong office. Also, look for special Breaking Bread events in your area. All efforts benefit area food banks and soup kitchens. For more information, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/ArmstrongOneWire.
Well, hey, that's going to do it for our show. Thanks so much, of course, to Viking Jim for his great time, and for Greg Roten, I'm Jim Evans. And you know what? We'll see you next time right here on Loose Change. Here we will.